One of the most valuable things that you can have in this life and in this walk of Christ is time. And sometimes we take advantage of the time that we have and waste it on the things that won't get us anywhere, won't get us towards the life that God wants us to live. And so that's why it's so important that you pay attention to what you're actually doing with your time. Because if you don't, time will fly by so fast and you won't even notice. That's why you can scroll on social media for like 2 and 3 hours without even thinking it's an hour went by. It's because you need to take more value in the time that you have. Because if you don't, then time will fly by and you will miss out on so many things that God wants for you. So that's why in this video, I'll be talking about the 5 ways that you can value your time more and start using your time more wisely so that you can live the life that God wants you to live. And the first way to start valuing your time more and start using your time more wisely is doing everything in decency and order. Making sure your life is structured, because it's hard to live a life that values time when you don't even have a structured life, because you don't know what you're wasting your time on. And so that's why it's so important that whatever you do, that you are actually doing it with structure and decency and order. You can do this simply by, scheduling your time. So scheduling your day. If that is too hard for you, what you can do is set a timer before you do something. And that makes you think about what you're doing for your time and how long you're actually doing it. So if you know that you're finna scroll on social media or you're tired and you just want to rest for a little while, put a timer on how long you want to rest and then see how that actually changes your life. Because many of the times we rest for 2 to 3 hours or we scroll on social media for too long, and that causes us to lose time, with God, lose time, doing the things that we're supposed to be doing, like being productive. And so you need to do things in decency and order. And it says that in 1 Corinthians chapter 14, verse 40, where Paul tells the church to do everything in decency and order, because we need to be structured as followers of Christ. We need to be disciplined as followers of Christ. And in order to do that, you have to be structured. So, and the second way to make sure that you're valuing your time is trusting God. You need to trust God in everything that you do. And the reason why it's important to trust God if you want to value time is because if you are working hard and if you are doing things and yet you don't see results right away, then you will start to lack trust in God and start saying, oh, this is not worth my time and I don't need to be working on this too much because the results won't show up anyway, or they won't show up faster. And then you will slowly start to go back to your distractions, slowly start to give up on the dream or the vision that God has given you. And so that's why it's important that you trust God, because if you don't trust God, then you won't work on the things that God will tell you to work on, and you won't continue to stay consistent on the things that God is telling you to do. For example, if God told you to start a business and he told you to work on it for like a specific amount of time, and yet that time takes away the time you used to, scroll on social media and have all the rest time. And so, yes, you do it for a while, but you don't see the results right away. So instead of spending, 8 hours like God told you to on the business, you start to spend like 4 hours and then spend the other 4 on social media. And so that's why it's important that you trust God. Put your trust in God, because if you continue to work and do the good works that God is telling you to do in the right season, your harvest will come. So don't grow weary of doing good, because God has something special for you, and you have to trust him on that and trust what his word says, that he has plans to prosper you and not to harm you. And then that's when you'll get the reward that God is wanting to give you. So, and the third way to start valuing your time more is realizing how God looks at you and realizing that he has a purpose for you. He has plans to prosper you and not to harm you, as Jeremiah 29 verse 11 tells us. He has plans to prosper you and not to harm you, but you have to be obedient to him in order for his will to show up in your life. And so you can't waste all your time on social media scrolling. You can't waste all your time, hanging out with friends. You can't waste all your time on that favorite TV show you like to watch. You need to start spending more time with God. Start spending more time fulfilling the will that God has for you, or else it will not be accomplished. And many times we do that because we think we have more time than we actually think. And so we take advantage of that time, and then we end up wasting it. So that's why it's important that you first off value your time and then value yourself. Because if you don't value yourself, then that's when you'll start to be lazy. If you don't think you have a purpose here, if you don't think that God can use you, then of course you're just going to sit around. You're not going to do anything because you don't think God can use you for more. And that is the same thing with getting too comfortable. If we think that we are good and we have no more room to grow, then of course we're going to just sit around and think we have all this time in the world. But you need to realize that God always has more for you. If you are on this earth, then there's always something more for you to do. Then God has you here for a reason. And once you start to really understand that, that is when you'll start valuing your time here more. And so find out what God wants you to work on. Continue to seek if you don't know what that specific thing is. And our purpose here, of course, is to serve others and grow into the person that God wants us to be, because there's always something, we're never perfect. We're always growing to new levels. We can always grow closer to Jesus and start living more like Jesus. So figure out what area in your life that you could work on, as well as do what God is calling you to do in the moment. Because our overall purpose, yes, is to grow to be like Christ and to serve others. But our calling is how we serve others, how we can spread that light. So figure out what you're called to do in the moment, because our calling always changes. Like we can, in one season our calling may be going to school. Then the next calling can be, going to a job. Then our next calling could be raising a family. Whatever it is in your life that you need to do, make sure that you are doing whatever God calls you to do. And he does that by putting it on your heart. Whatever God puts on your heart, make sure that you're doing it and not procrastinating on it, because he has a calling for all of us. You just have to be willing to answer it. So number 4 is realizing that our time here is short. You see, the reason why we sometimes even take advantage of other people's time or take advantage of, our loved ones is because we feel like they're going to be here forever. We have so much time to spend with them later on. And so we neglect them sometimes. So we don't, we could go sometimes be spending time with our family instead of playing the game. We can sometimes be spending time with family or friends instead of, being on social media all the time. But we neglect that because we feel like we have so much more time and they'll be here forever. But truth is, we don't know when our time is up. We can be dying tomorrow. Jesus could come back tomorrow. So that's why it's important that you value the time that you have with not only your friends, your family, your loved ones, but also your calling, whatever God is calling you to do, because God could be calling you to do. He could be calling you so many times, like over and over and over. And the more you ignore that, the less time that you have to fulfill. And we know if we look back in the past, look back at our younger self, no matter how young you are, you probably have something that you wanted to do in that time, but you didn't complete it because you were procrastinating on it, and you continue to procrastinate on it. And so time continued to go by and you still didn't do it. Well, I once heard that right now is the youngest you'll ever be. So make sure that even if you have missed out on an opportunity because you procrastinated, don't procrastinate again just because you feel like you're older and that you missed that opportunity. You can redeem that opportunity just by not procrastinating right now and taking action on the things that God wants you to take action. So make sure that you are valuing your time, because every second matters, every minute matters. And yes, you can use some of that time to rest. You can use some of that time to, get your mind off things so you don't overwhelm yourself. But make sure that you are using most of your time to fulfill the things that God wants you to fulfill, because really nothing else matters in this life except a relationship with God and the things that we help other people with and helping people grow. Because the only thing that really matters is growing a relationship with God and also helping other people grow a relationship with God, because everything else is vanity. You can't take anything with us. So, and number five is realizing what you can accomplish, having faith in God. Because if you realize how much you can accomplish and how much time it actually takes to accomplish it, then you will actually take the steps to do what God is calling you to do. But if you feel like it's impossible to accomplish just because you don't see results right away, then of course you're going to end up focusing on the distractions more than actually fulfilling what God is calling you to do, because you're going to think that all the work is going to be pointless. But if you realize how much your life can change in just a year if you apply the right steps, then you will actually do the things that God is calling you to do. So make sure that you put your faith in God and realize how much God can change your life, as long as you put in the work to do it and put your work towards the right things. Because if you are working towards the wrong things, then you will never be able to move to that next step. Because think about the Israelites in slavery. No matter how hard they worked in slavery, if they didn't get freed by Moses, then they would be stuck there forever. Well, it's the same thing with us modern day. If we work a job 9 to 5 where you can't grow as much, then of course, no matter how hard you work, you're going to still be stuck in the same place. Well, if you put that same work towards, a business, that God is putting on your heart, then that's where you can grow. That's where you can grow to new levels. It's the same thing with the Israelites. Once they got freed, if they continued to work, even though they were going through so much, they would have reached their promised land and been able to have the life that they desire. But because they gave up and went back to their old way, they weren't able to accomplish that. So do not be like the Israelites. Make sure that you are continuing to work on what God puts on your heart. Make sure that you're continuing to grow, because God wants to take all of us to new levels. We just have to be willing to put in that work. So I appreciate y'all for watching. I appreciate all the support. If you want to support, the link is down below. And I hope that y'all can actually use this and apply it to your life, because you need to value your time. And once you learn this and apply it to your life will completely change. Because the time that you are using on, social media, the time that you are wasting, you could be using it to change your life. But you just have to be willing to take the steps, research what you want to do and put in the work that needs to be done. So yeah, appreciate y'all for watching. I appreciate all the support. But until next time, as usual, y'all stay blessed.